They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Rogueways is honored to bring back a man of deep honor, integrity, and commitment to the highest good. Someone who never stops fighting for all of us, even as he has faced his own hell and come out the other side a warrior. A health champion bringing us life-changing nutritional supplements to keep us charging down our paths. A man who reminds us always to act in our free and sovereign interests. And a father who has paid the ultimate sacrifice for his family and still fights on to this day, unfortunately. David, Stephen, it's an immense honor to have you back on Rogueways tonight, and thank you so much for sharing with us all that you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me on again, Lindsay. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all that you're doing and bringing light to this world.
Back at you, and thank you very much. And so I've changed things a little bit where I'm going to posit the pointless question of the episode and then do my updates for people. So you have a minute to think about it, because people have told me it's too much pressure when I just jump into it. So, David, the pointless question of the episode for you is, what's the best way to float on water? Like what device or where or anywhere else you want to take that? So take a minute to consider your answer. And I'm going to remind everyone listening out there, especially on the podcast, that you're missing out on one episode a week that's only on Rockfin on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. You can grab it there by going to rockfin.com/rogueways. That's ROKFIN.com/rogueways. Last week we talked about ancient temples and their alignments to the cosmos, the planet, and our physical bodies, and the implications therein. And every week we aim to strip away the vapid and shallow from the spiritual and get real about our spiritual bodies and what it means to be a human here on Earth. And also, I'd love to see every single person out there on locals.com. Rogue.locals.com is our community space. That's where we can exchange ideas, vent, get support, share resources, and just be generally badasses. And I hope to see you all there, especially because I got my first video warning or whatever removed from YouTube, and so I have 3 strikes left as far as I know before the bastard censoring pieces of shit take me down. And so I really would love to keep you all in my circle, and if you want to come to locals.com, rogue.locals.com, or Rockfin, or both, then we can at least stay connected. You know, I don't think I'm going to go the route of a backup YouTube channel, because as far as I've seen, they'll just go attack that too. They know what they're doing. So it's starting, and I don't consent to it, but I also want to keep in touch with you all if they manage to pull it off. So just make sure you've got your backup plan in place and go find me on one of those places. And David, where did you land on the question of floating on water?
Perfect. You know, I used to spend a lot of time whitewater kayaking.
Oh.
And so if you were to ask me what my preference was, what I think the best way, the most exciting way, is to get your backside in a whitewater kayak and just see where those mountain streams will take you.
That
waterfalls and all.
Terrifying. It's pretty dangerous, right?
Well, it sure can be. You know, like I've actually got
doing.
a video somewhere out there on YouTube where you know, I had it videoed from 2 different angles, and the video cut short because the videographers thought that they were about to have to engage in a life rescue. And when they finally got out of the canyon that they were in and they saw my boat going over the next set of falls a few hundred yards down, upside down, they thought I was dead, but I was hanging onto a rock. I'd been able to eject at the bottom of these falls that were about 40 feet in total going down sequentially, but it was pretty rough. It can be. Anyway, so I started that. I had a 1-year-old son at the time. My oldest was 1 at the time, and I started to realize that I have other priorities too. That, you know, as exciting as it is, that, you know, I should take things a little bit easier. So I slowed down a little bit, not too much, but a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the motorcycle thing. Like people love their motorcycles and they have kids and they're like, well, maybe it's a little too risky. Like, gotta back off a little bit. That sounds amazing. I just was at the Grand Canyon recently and we were watching these rapids that we could see from one of these southern viewpoints we were at, or I guess I should say eastern. And we're like, that looks kind of intense or whatever. And we read the little plaque and it was like 13 stories of descent, and I was like, that's way more intense than it looks like from 3 miles away or wherever we are. But I've just talked to people who have not kayaked, but whatever it's called when you're just in the floaty inflatable with a bunch of people.
Yeah, whitewater
rafting. Okay. Did that on the bottom of the Grand Canyon and for 7 days, and I was like, I might have to do that. That's a little safer, right? Because other people are in charge of maneuvering and I just sit in the middle. I might have to do that.
I think it's debatable. I mean, I like being attached to my kayak because, as long as I can get back up right, I've got a big flotation device attached right to me rather than just a life jacket. So if you get knocked out of a whitewater raft, you've got a life jacket, you're bobbing up and down, head under the water, up, and I just prefer to be attached to the actual large flotation device that's filled with air.
That's a good point. And you're in control of it. So if you know what you're doing, then you can trust that maybe a little bit more than random people who might be hungover or who knows what. I also, when I was writing this question, was thinking about, because I was like, oh, I just want to float in like a lake, like be still and just float in the center of the lake just with my body. But then I was thinking about flotation tanks, and I've never done that. Have you ever done that?
Nope.
Do you have any desire to?
I don't know. I don't even know what the flotation tanks are.
It's like salt water, and you go in, and because it's salty, you float, really easily. You don't sink, and then it's sensory deprivation too. They shut the lid, and it's pure black. No sound can get in.
Yep. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Kind of feel that sense of almost not nothingness, but just floating.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a place that I'm at in my life now. Is that I can do without the whitewater kayaking, is because it doesn't give me the adrenaline rush anymore. I just look at it as, skill building, right? But I don't get that rush like I once did. Yeah. So I'd love to just kind of sit there and zen out.
Yeah, it's a different kind of rush. It's a different kind of experience. Well, I heard also that you had a horrifying car accident recently that sounded pretty intense. Are you okay?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it because I'm wearing black on black, but
you can.
Yeah, I'm slung up here, and my bone mid-humerus here, between the elbow and the shoulder, isn't connected right now. So
oh my god.
It's really weird, like sometimes I'll wake up from a dream where I'm using my arm and it really hurts because I'm actually trying to use it and it's rotating from the shoulder, but it's not moving down below, right? Wow. So it's like I have another joint in between there right now. It hasn't fused back together yet. So I'm actually going to see the surgeon tomorrow to hopefully get a better plan of action outside of surgery. I want to do my best to avoid that at all costs. I just want to let nature do its thing there. But anyway, so yeah, we did have an accident. I have a newfound respect, for wind as well.
Wow.
Water I have a respect for now after almost dying from that. Now I've almost died from the wind. We were towing a holiday trailer and I looked in the side view mirror at one point and saw the trailer was about 30-degree tilt and realized it was probably past the point of return, and suddenly the truck lifted up with it and away we went flying into the ditch. I was in the passenger seat and we just body slammed right into the ditch, literally airborne off the edge of the ditch and then slammed down, and my arm proceeded to fly right through the window and then pile drived into the ground with all the glass shards and stuff, and so it got all torn up from the glass. But at some point I must have hit the ground pretty hard with my fist, and it probably just launched my arm back. And imagine putting your arm out the window, that point at where your elbow is kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
It hit the window frame there. I think that's what happened. It just snapped. And so by the time that we had come to a stop, I went to assess myself, and I went to look at my hand that I was sure I was holding up to keep it out of the window after experiencing that pain. And I went to look at where it was at and it wasn't there. And that was really weird, and then I looked a little further down and here it was dangling in the most unnatural ways. It was just, there was a weird bend in the bicep that shouldn't be there.
Oh God.
And so my shoulder was pointed as if my arm would be in front of me, but my arm was hanging behind me.
Wow.
And so Yeah, that was actually pretty scary because I thought I'd severed it at first because there's a lot of blood that was accompanying it at that point in time too. So, but then when I saw my fingers moving, but yet I couldn't feel them moving, but every time I think about moving them, they were moving.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, no, I think it's connected.
whew.
I think it's all good. I
Yeah.
think, although the bone is, I know there's something wrong with the bone here. It shouldn't be bending that way. So, anyways, that was about 2 weeks, yeah, about 16 days ago,
Wow.
and so I'm hoping for a speedy recovery as soon as it fuses back together with all the supplements that I've been taking and homeopathics and whatnot. It should correct pretty quickly. They're saying 6 to 9 months. I think as soon as it gets back together here, I'm going to be up and running again 6 to 9 weeks max. So I'm optimistic that it's not going to hold me back from getting some stuff done during the summer here.
I am totally with you. They have their ideas based on like the common sort of modern human who's just like inhaling sugar and, freebasing crack and whatever. Like, who knows what they're doing? And you're like, no, I actually understand my body and my health, and I take care of myself, and more so than most people. Which leads me to ask you to remind people what these supplements are that you make, because there's some people who maybe haven't heard of you or haven't seen our previous episodes together, and just to give them that sort of overview, because it's really amazing. And I have actually, since we first talked, which was a while ago, I've suggested this to many people I know who have been struggling with mental health issues, and they've experienced really significant improvement. So I both want people to know about that, and then, sort of some of the story as much as you can of just throw in of like how you even came to them.
Absolutely. That's beautiful to hear. It's always lovely to hear when people's lives are being changed, and it's not uncommon, but it's just, really nice to actually hear the feedback, because, I'm at kind of arm's length from it. I oversee the Canadian retail division, where we put it into the hands of naturopathic doctors, alternative practitioners, health food stores, and all that. But I don't actually get to, I have my reps, and then my reps discuss it with their clientele. So they get to hear a lot of the stories, but they don't always make their way back to me.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear, when it's a blessing to people. But yeah, so basically what we do is we work with the fundamental nutrients that the body absolutely needs to thrive. And those nutrients we are not getting near enough of because of modern farming methods, where we've not only depleted the soils significantly, where those minerals aren't available, but we've also completely bastardized the soil by introducing these synthetic herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, which prevents the minerals from being uptaken into the plants because the bacteria culture isn't there to break it down and convert these into organic molecules, right? So they're basically inert rock form minerals. So what we do is we mimic what would happen in nature by taking comprehensive blends of these vitamins and minerals, adding them together, converting them the same way that nature would do in ideal circumstances. And it's phenomenal what it does when you feed the body what it needs and allow the body to do what it does best, and that's healing and regenerating. And it's amazing. We're not just talking, a lot of times minerals people associate with bone health, all that. We're talking about mental health. Minerals have an absolute crucial role in mental health, working synergistically with the amino acids and the vitamins and omega fatty acids. Without the minerals, those other three groups of ingredients won't do anything. And so they all work synergistically. And so it's amazing to see what we can do with mental health issues, but we're talking about even cardiovascular health issues, in relation to the conversion of omega fatty acids into the proper, ALA from hemp, flax, chia, being converted into EPA, which is absolutely necessary for cardiovascular health, and even just the production of insulin. Many people don't recognize that to produce insulin, you need chromium, vanadium, potassium, selenium, magnesium, and zinc. And so if you're missing one of those, you don't produce the insulin. Now you're not able to control your blood sugars.
Wow.
And so it's just, we're talking total health here, but we hone in on the mental health aspect because that's, going back to the story, my family was plagued with severe mental health conditions where my grandfather took his life 5 years before I was even born. 10 years after I was born, my mother followed in his footsteps and took her life and left behind 9 children between her and my dad that all had various mental health conditions, some of them quite severe. My sister being in and out of the psych ward on a regular basis, having to be on 24-hour supervision because she had obsessed about killing herself and her 3-year-old son. My brother, just older than me, being homicidal. Basically, he's stockpiling weapons, threatening to kill people. He was basically the next schoolyard shooting waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And the medications just didn't work. They just didn't work. my father put his trust initially in the medical system, and it never delivered. Just like it didn't deliver for my mother, because she had been on Prozac for 2 weeks before she killed herself. Which, when we look back at it now, seeing the scientific evidence that was initially withheld, it was the Prozac that absolutely pushed her over the edge, unfortunately. And so, anyways, my father spent a lot of time fasting, praying, meditating on the matter, pondering it. And it was amazing to see how, when he did that over the period of a few months, information just came into his life that led him to the discovery of vitamins and minerals being the answer to severe mental health conditions. And him and a business partner moved forward with it, trying to develop. It actually wasn't even a business partner at the time, just him and a colleague. They were business partners in a different business. And this colleague of his had a tremendous amount of experience in the animal feed industry, formulating feed for hogs across Western Canada and the U.S. And this individual's name was David Hardy. And anyway, so they worked together and tried to put together something that would correct the issues that David Hardy had seen in the hog pens, where the hogs would get irritable with each other, and they would bite chunks of their tails and ears off each other. And if you didn't pin them away from each other, they'd actually kill each other. And so they set out to get the same type of formula, that the nutrient formula that worked in eradicating the disorders in the pigs, and do so for humans. And eventually it morphed into the development of a product that, being Empower Plus is the main one here. That's our flagship product that we've had since 1998. We've honed in on it. We've further developed it. The formula is still the same, but what we do to it makes you can take about a quarter or less of the product and still get the same amount of benefits that you would have in 1998. And anyways, wow. It's just changing lives, and that's a beautiful thing. And at this time in history, it's probably more so needed than ever before, with what they've done to us with the whole COVID lockdowns and isolating us, disconnecting us from our loved ones. Mental health issues are massively on the rise. Deaths of despair are on the rise due to increased stress and anxiety. And this product helps alleviate that significantly. People a lot of times ask me how I do it, how I get through day to day with all the hell I've been through after losing my son and being falsely accused, going to jail for it, and just constantly fighting now for 9 years.
God.
And then having a bunch of other stuff happen in the meantime as well. People ask me how I do it and how I keep my head on straight. And, it comes down to two things: being spiritually and physically nourished, which is all God in essence. I mean, God put the nutrients here for us to feed the physical. And, when we tap in and we develop that relationship with God as well, between those two things, living in a clean temple, we become, inconquerable.
Yeah. It's really, really well said. And I often, I do some sort of spiritual guidance and counseling, I guess you might say, of people. And I think a lot of times people are kind of like, why are you telling me to eat healthy and go outside? I thought you were doing spiritual guidance. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's half the battle. It's just keeping yourself healthy like that. Because like you said, people don't, especially I think mental health, we don't connect with nutrient deficiency. And I think for me, at least, when I talked to you the first time is when I really understood that, and that this can be the key that helps so many people find health and wellness. And it's just not something that even if we are sort of health conscious, I just don't think we necessarily make that connection. Someone in the chat, Lindsay Smith, just said, so many mothers give birth and afterwards are depleted of nutrients and they're given Zoloft instead of the nutrients they need. And that's so sad. And I just now am connecting that now because she said this in the chat, that all of these mothers that experience postpartum depression might be just very nutritionally deprived.
It absolutely is. And in fact,
Wow.
when it comes to, if we're talking major, clinical depression or major anxiety, typically it'll take us, a few weeks to really start to correct that or completely correct it in many instances. But when it comes to postpartum psychosis or depression, when we get mothers, new mothers on the supplement, it's literally days before they have a complete turnaround, just because it just pushed them just over the edge. Because those babies aren't made from nothing.
Yeah.
Those babies are
they
absolutely
take everything they need.
Exactly. And the mother gives everything that they need. And that's why many mothers will see major tooth decay during pregnancies.
Yeah.
because literally the body's robbing the bones and the teeth and everywhere for key nutrients to give to that baby.
And those prenatal vitamins are not cutting it. Like, that's not even close, because some of that isn't even really bioavailable, which all of your supplements are. And it's, I don't think, even based on kind of realistic ideas of what you should be having anyway.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, what a cool resource. And I know people are in the chat are already like, where do I get this? And how do I go? And so it's, I think it's truehope.com, right?
If you're in the US, truehope.com is where you would get it from, and it's direct to consumer. You'll order it right from there. If you're in Canada, the most simple and easy and cheap way to get it is actually just to go to your local health food store. We're well situated throughout the whole west of Canada. The vast majority of health food stores carry it. And for many of the health food stores, it's actually their top selling product because it delivers the results and people keep on coming back for it. In the East, we're just getting situated now. But if you go to truehopecanada.com, within Canada, you'll find a location finder and it'll show you a store near you. So if you're in the East, it's going to be a little bit more sporadic. But if you're in the West, just about any the vast majority of health food stores carry it.
And if you can go into health stores still, if they're letting you in, if you're someone who can wear a mask, or if they're letting in people without masks, then you can also request it, I'm sure, and they'll start to get with the program that they should carry it if they're not already carrying it, hopefully. Yeah. And speaking of that madness, like you said, with these lockdowns and all of this garbage going on, there's so much more mental health, crises going on. And it's one of the untold or kind of ignored consequences of this behavior our society has chosen to go completely insane. And yeah, so there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure, who could really benefit from this. So if anyone out there is listening and knows of someone who's really struggling with this, or if you yourself are, give it a try. It's a pretty cheap way to see if you can change your whole life or help someone else change their life.
Absolutely. And even just talking general immunity and everything else, I mean, it's got, the immune boosting nutrients in there as well, zinc and vitamin C and all that. Good. But it's just amazing. I mean, it changes every aspect of your life. It really does. I mean, that sounds like a pretty big claim, but when you feed your body everything that it needs, or the vast majority of what it needs, don't get me wrong, I also recommend omega fatty acids along with it, and maybe a good protein or amino acids. But the fact of the matter is we're addressing the greatest deficiency, and that's the minerals based on what we've done in agriculture. And so just from that supplement alone, it changes every aspect of life in how you even perceive stressful situations and everything. You learn to deal with things much differently.
It's so amazing. And I think also, if people who haven't really felt it or experienced it, and I have a sort of experience with my thyroid disorder where I was not aware that my mood and emotional state and way of being could be completely changed by this, hormone production factory that's not well aligned. And so I understand now how completely transformational something like, nutrition or this hormone or whatever it might be can be to your emotional. So if you're out there kind of like, yeah, no, I mean, I have these emotions, nutrients aren't going to take the emotions away. It's just like you said, it's not necessarily going to take the emotional trauma or pain away. It's going to make it so that it's much more easily dealt with and transformed more easily into a state of health.
Yeah, especially when it comes to past traumas and everything. I mean, we see even with PTSD, we're providing people with the tools wherein they can kind of, go back into those situations and actually reprocess them, reassociate what it's all about. But when you're in a nutrient deficient state and you're not producing, all the proper neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, all the, the reward circuitry isn't working in the brain and all that, you find yourself in some deep, dark places naturally. And it's just a real hard thing to actually address past traumas in the proper way if you're not, mentally well. Yeah. So when you supply the proper nutrients, the body takes care of itself, and then you can actually go and deal with the things that you need to deal with.
It's also fascinating to think of people who are like gardening, and they might have their kind of chickens or goats or whatever they're doing. They're eating a lot of their own foods. They also might be nutrient deficient because their soil, like you said, has been depleted over the years. And these things that they might not even use, but that just are in the air or in the water or in the, ground from previous uses or whatnot, can also be affecting it. So, even people who are that aware and trying that hard could still not have enough of these nutrients. It's just crazy. It's mind-blowing to me.
Exactly. If we were to go down that route, that's been I'm trying to make these nutrients obsolete myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
and the best way to do that is to get it so that all these nutrients are found in the food.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little project of mine. In fact, just right behind me here, I've got my garden just out the window here, but I've also got 400 trees that I planted. Most of them are fruit bearing trees. I've got 2 greenhouses that are going up, and that's a project I've been working on is in restoring not only the nutrients. I went and spread 4,000 pounds of composted mineral on the acreage back here last year. But now I'm trying to activate it by introducing the proper, the fungi and the bacteria and all that into the soil.
Cool.
And then create an environment where all of that can continue to thrive. And that way, all that mineral I put in there is now going to be broken down and uptaken into the plants. And I'm going to have some extremely nutrient-rich, disease-resilient plants coming out of it. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And when you do that, you don't need to engage in all this pesticide garbage and all that, because when you have healthy plants, they're producing high levels of terpenes and other pesticides. Survival of the fittest. When you take a look at a herd of deer, it's always the weak deer that get weeded out first because they're slower and they're all that. And so nature has a way of weeding out the weak. When you have weak plants that aren't nutrient rich, they'll get consumed by all of these pests. But when you have nutrient dense, healthy plants, they tend to thrive on their own. And nature has a way of preserving them. And so I'm really looking forward to doing that. It's been a long-term project of mine, but I would love to at some point get to the point where I don't even take my own nutrients, and now I go and start educating on how to get people to grow food properly that is so nutrient dense that it becomes their medicine, as Hippocrates once said, "Let food be thy medicine." But right now we're in a place where food, unfortunately, is, even if we eat organic and all that, which I do and have been doing for many years, just isn't potent enough to be our medicine.
Wow. It makes so much sense. We're talking about how our bodies, in order to heal themselves, which is what they do, like you said, we have to give them all this stuff and this ability to do that. And then they naturally fight off things like really bad colds that are supposedly pandemics. And then, plants are the same. Plants also have bodies. Plants also are made to resist, these things that would otherwise attack them if they don't have enough of the nutrients. It makes perfect sense. But we don't, in my head, their farming happens and then the disease comes through and ravages it and there's nothing you could do but hope. But that's not true. You're doing it and you're showing how that's true. And then is it true you can just then, compost your own, farm waste or whatever, and then put that back in. So it's just going to keep going forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Of course.
Build that system.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, and we live on a pretty closed system here where what comes onto the farm basically stays on the farm. So we try to keep everything pretty clean coming on, even in relation to what we consume. Because if we consume garbage, I mean, we don't have a sewer line that takes it down, to a sewage treatment plant and all that. It ends up somewhere on the property in a septic field. And it's if we're eating garbage chemicals or glyphosate or whatever, it's going to come back up into the property at some point in time and be recycled in everywhere. So we try to keep everything clean. But we also try to bring a lot of minerals into the system, not only in what we consume, but in what we're putting on the land. And then at some point, the input is very minimal because it just kind of stays on the property and gets cycled back over and over and over again.
How cool. What a beautiful system. I love that so much. I've been talking to, my past few guests and just people here and there about this. This is kind of the goals, what you're doing. You have this, community and farm, and you have this self-sustainable practices and very intentional about it. And a lot of people want that, but I look at Zillow all the time, almost obsessively, and I have for years, just looking all over just to see what's available and what's kind of going in. Right now, it's crazier than it's ever been. There's less available and it's for higher prices than it has ever been. And I think a lot of people, because of COVID and the lockdowns and seeing what the government was doing, the people who were even slightly awake were like, well, let's get out of here. Let's go to the countryside and try to at least have some food and some land and something going on. But there's not a lot left. And so those of us, who might not have had the money, now we definitely don't, because now it's even more expensive. And do you have any suggestions for people who are sort of stuck in the city or stuck somewhere that isn't ideal for having this self-sustainable situation, but they do want to try to do something? Do you have any sort of tips for people?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of people, a lot of landowners that are looking to co-op with people. I've been consulting with quite a few groups across Canada, in relation to setting up community. And one of the most successful ways that I've seen that done is that where you already have a pre-existing landowner who has a communal mind. They see the value of it. They see that there's power in numbers and working together. And so co-oping with them so that not everybody has to go and try to find their own piece of land, because it's extremely hard to become self-sufficient on your own.
Yes.
You can do it, but you're basically eking out of an existence, and you're never going to get everything right because you don't possibly have the time to do it.
Right.
Whereas if you have some people that specialize in plumbing and electrical and all that type of stuff, and they're able to, maybe set up the off-grid setup so that you still have electricity flowing. Whereas, some people are better at gardening and all that, and they're able to get the gardens going and maybe set up some greenhouses and all that. And so everybody kind of shines. They're able to move forward with their talents. There's a tremendous value in people coming together and sharing their gifts and talents that way. And everybody does so much better through it. Everybody is able to actually live life a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more relaxed, a lot less stress, not having to be redundant in every matter. Not every family having to go and buy a lawnmower, or every family having to go and buy pruning shears, or every family having to, get their own off-grid setup. It's just, it makes things a lot easier. It alleviates the burden of it. So if people don't have the money for land, find somebody who's willing, that has land, that you align with, and jump on the land with them and help them out and get established.
That's super awesome. I love that suggestion. I know, like you said, a lot of people are doing that, and I love your view of it, where it's, you still own what you own, or at least work towards owning what you own, and you have what you have, but you all share. So it's not like the traditional commune where it can fall apart really easily because there are not really any boundaries, and so therefore boundaries get crossed because there's always actually boundaries, and just
Absolutely.
Things fall apart, but that everybody does have what they have, but they're working together on purpose, and that keeps I just think it keeps things going a lot easier.
Exactly. And you bring up a really good point there, that there has to be boundaries. You don't want to recreate the socialism that we're trying to come out of, because it'll have the same devastating effects. You're going to have the haves, the have-nots, or everybody's going to have, but some people are going to work and some people are going to work not, and that's not good. That creates serious resentment. And when you're looking at kind of sharing the overall goal, or the overall what you reap from it, if everybody's kind of getting the produce from it. When some people are busy, maybe playing video games or something like that, while there's other people that are busy working to build it up. At the end of the day, when you get enough people that are kind of twiddling their thumbs, the only thing that you're going to share at the end of the day is poverty and starvation.
Yeah. And
so it's so important that that work ethic is crucial, that people, give of their time and talents, that there's a strong enough vision that gets everybody out of bed in the morning, and they're wanting to work towards that. And maybe some people won't be working the property as much. Maybe they're still busy with a business, and they're bringing money onto the property to assist. But it's one of those things where, people got to be willing to sacrifice and give, but also that there's still autonomy. There's autonomy within the families. There's freedom there. And that there's still individual property, because you can't just go into this socialistic or communistic, because it's going to be devastating very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're supposed to not have so many attachments and stuff, but I mean, I have my things, like this is my desk and that's my car, and like if you just take it and pretend it's yours, like I'm going to have emotional negative responses to that. So I really like that delineation, that people can share but still have their stuff. And it's just really great to have that vision and to know someone who's working towards it and doing this and living this, and that it works. And it's very inspiring and hope giving to people. But I know you've also, like you said, struggled so much with this horrendous ongoing, tragedy of the government really targeting you. And I tend to think it's partially because you have all these skills and have this knowledge and live like this and inspire so many people that they're like, holding on so much, because it's still going on, right?
Yeah. So we talked before about the case surrounding the death of my son back in 2012. We're now sitting at 9 years and a month, right? Actually today, 9 years 1 month.
Wow.
That he ended up in Alberta Children's Hospital, and then a massive fabrication surrounding the death of him was created to throw us under the bus and to basically cover up for the shortcomings of the medical system, wherein they weren't properly equipped, resulting in criminal negligence. They knew that they weren't properly equipped, but they didn't do anything about it until a week after the passing of my son, with the ambulance that he ended up in, where they then overdosed him on medications, and they tried to cover that up. And put him into cardiac arrest even after he'd gone for 8.5 minutes with oxygen. So, they created this big narrative about him having bacterial meningitis, and that was disproven in 2016. And yet the media still is trying to parrot it. They had to stop parroting that in 2019 when the judge actually came down and found us not guilty after we had gone through the first preliminary hearing, the trial, found guilty wrongfully, ended up in jail, and went to the Alberta Appeals Court in 2017. They upheld the wrongful decision. We ended up in the Supreme Court of Canada in 2018. They overturned it and said it was wrong, sent us back to trial again. They said that you deserve a fair trial. It should have been thrown out. We should have never been to trial in the first place, especially being that there's still withheld evidence to this day. God. We don't have a full disclosure. You can't bring us to court, but they did twice for 2 main trials. And then, now we win in 2019. Then the Alberta Crown Prosecution Office appeals the decision because they didn't like it, because now a precedent was set that the Crown would have to prove that medical attention makes a difference, that medical medications or medical interventions would actually make a difference in order to substantiate it as a necessary of life, so that they could then charge parents with failing to provide the necessaries of life. And so they didn't like the fact that their accusations were going to come under scientific scrutiny, especially when science isn't on their side in most of these cases. So they wanted that, hey, look, this is Western medicine. By virtue of it being Western medicine, it should be a necessary of life, just as air, water, shelter, food. Those are necessaries of life. And so is Western medicine, because, well, it's Western medicine, right? And so they didn't want it to have to come under scientific scrutiny and have to be proven that it would actually make a difference in somebody's life before they could charge a parent for not giving certain medications to their child. And so anyways, so they appealed it, and they also played the racist card in the whole matter, because the Nigerian doctor, I shouldn't even call him a doctor, right. The Nigerian individual who is under credential fraud in numerous states in the US right now, because he may not actually be a doctor legitimately. And I've got the evidence before me. And if he is a doctor, he should never be qualified as an expert witness, because he sure doesn't know his stuff, failing test after test after test, and has to work under the supervision of another doctor while he's down in the US right now. Because he was Nigerian and he was hard to understand, and the judge made note of that like, hey, he can say whatever evidence, bring forward to the court, whatever he wants, but if we can't understand it, you can't put any weight on it. Yeah. So, because he made those comments, they said he's a racist. The judge is a racist. Oh my God. And he should have never found David and Colette not guilty. So anyways, they appealed on that, and the Alberta Appeal Court actually went with it. Not only did they go with it, they had to outright lie and create a new narrative in their written decision. They had to omit evidence that we had supplied to them. And so they had to write a narrative contrary to the actual black and white evidence that we submitted to them. But then they also resurrected the vaccine issue, the issue that the Crown wasn't even willing to go there anymore, because we had already beat them back in 2016 with Dr. Tony Bark and Dr. Tetiana Obekhanich, showing that vaccines were neither safe nor effective. So you couldn't even try to incorporate that as a necessary of life in the whole realm of this. And they were trying to do that so that they could charge parents for not vaccinating. Well, the Alberta Appeal Courts, just this past month, they came out with a decision on March 8th, just resurrected that issue on their own volition, which is not within their right to do. It's the Crown that has to bring the issues forward, and the Crown didn't raise that issue. And so now the Alberta Appeal Courts, and it's not just some random judges. This is actually the Chief Justice of Alberta assigned herself to this case, and then handpicked the other 2 judges to work alongside her. So this is a top judge in Alberta that just rendered this decision. And she came out and said that my son's death would have almost certainly been avoided had he been vaccinated. Raising an issue for the next trial that they just said we're turning it back to trial again. And so here we are, over 9 years past the death of my son, and they're still now trying to bring it to a third trial. However, the Crown, it just gets like, you almost like, it's almost fiction when you look at it. Like, it's just a series of events and how it's rolled out. It just, it's the making of a movie without having to dramatize anything.
Yes.
Um,
It reminds me of Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide, when he goes to that planet where they're all like have to stamp everything like 18 times and shuffle through hallways and go to every floor. Like, it makes me think of that, but obviously much worse, but because it's real.
Right, but then now this whole new this whole new chain of events begins, wherein yesterday I couldn't find it online, but yesterday their star witness, Dr. Adiagbo, or the supposed Dr. Adiagbo, in the U.S. now,
Same guy.
Same guy,
Oh,
the one who
God.
falsified the initial autopsy report.
You think they'd abandon
He was supposed to
him?
be on trial for his own drunk driving and rear-ending a lady and injuring her in Indiana. And it's a level, I think it's called a level 5, not crime, but anyways,
Yeah.
he's facing up from 1 to 5 years in jail now.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is that he went and did that act 1 week after the initial investigation began in Indiana for his credential fraud. So he was aware of this credential fraud investigation. And if there was nothing to it, he'd be like, yeah, whatever, right? Like, I got nothing to worry about. But here he finds himself that next weekend going and getting liquored up and then driving his Mercedes home and rear-ending this lady and then getting busted for it. So now he's in huge trouble. And so the Crown prosecution, who wants to bring it back to a third trial, may not even have the ability to do so because their star witness is going to be down and out for the count, and he may be losing his medical license over this whole ordeal. And so, their whole case is just falling apart around them, and it's being exposed as to how corrupt it is, and all the destroyed evidence. Like, they're using medical evidence against us to try to convict us, but yet they've destroyed at least probably 100 pages of medical evidence. We have this massive black hole of evidence right after they put my son into cardiac arrest, and then they covered up what took place. And all of a sudden, nobody's recording anything. Nothing happens for a full hour during critical care while they're transporting him from Cardston to the Alberta Children's Hospital in Calgary. And so, the whole thing is just, it's unraveling. And yet they've had the arrogance in the past to keep on pushing, but it'll be, I think they still have the arrogance that they're going to keep on moving forward, and it just gets worse for them every single time. And it wakes up more and more people as to the corruption of the judiciary, that there is no justice or truth found in the halls of the courts. But I think they're going to keep on pushing and see what they can do, hell or high water. But I don't think it's going to pan out very well for them.
I think it's so awesome that they found you in their way, because I'm sure that most of the time people are like, I can't even deal with this, I don't know, I don't understand, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, and they just give up. And that's everything we see them doing right now. It's all just bullying and bullying and bullying, so that you eventually get worn down and you just give up and just put on the mask, just vaccinate, just do it and just give up. And here you are, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm good. And that's it. They're like, wait, what? I'm sure they just did not see that coming.
Well, I wasn't always, to be honest with you. I'll bring you back 5 years in time, actually. 5 years, 2 months. 5 years, 2 months ago. 5 years, 2 months ago, we find ourselves before the courts, about to go into our first trial. And we go in for a delay hearing to try to get the whole thing thrown out, based on the fact that it's been 30 months since, the initial, or it's been beyond 30 months since the initial charges. And yet they've taken their sweet time in getting us into court. And there's a natural prejudice that occurs from that. It has a negative impact on your life. It has a negative impact on the reliability of each witness that's coming forward, because memories get lost and all that.
True.
And so typically they throw the charges at that point in time. Well, they decided that they weren't going to. But they had just heard my testimony, and they'd heard my wife's testimony. And so now they get to see kind of the flavor of what they were going to get coming into the trial. And so what the Crown prosecution did is they came forward and they said, you know what? If David pleads guilty, and this is a common practice, this is what they do to people, and many people fold over it because it's just so much easier. If David pleads guilty, we'll give him 18 months probation. That's it. Colette, we won't do anything to her. She's free. And not only is she free, but we'll pay for her trauma counseling.
Wow. Wow.
right? Sounds like a pretty good deal, right?
Yeah.
But then they get the precedent that they want, that they can then go and beat the heck out of every other parent in Canada over,
Yeah.
because they now have case law, right?
Yeah.
So I looked at it, and I actually thought about it. I actually had to think about it for just, half an evening, right? I actually had to consider it. What's the best thing? I'm weighing it out. What's the best thing for my family, right? What's the best thing for me? What's the best thing for all Canadians? What's the best thing for liberty?
Yeah.
I had to weigh all that. What is the best thing for the sake of truth? And so I had to come back and say, you know what? For me, it would be the best decision. For my wife, it'd be the best decision. It would save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. We know that right off the bat, regardless of what the outcome of the first child would be. Let's just say that we were found not guilty. We should have been. It still would save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. It would save us all the grief of having to go and relive this whole situation of the passing of our son within a courtroom. It would save us the public scrutiny. It would save our reputations to a somewhat of a degree, right? Because it wouldn't get so showcased all over the place. At least we wouldn't think it would be, but maybe it would have. Wouldn't have gone international, although we weren't expecting to go international anyways. But it would have saved so much trouble. But then I'm like, I can't do that. I can't sleep at night knowing that I took the easy way out and pled guilty for something I'm not guilty for. That's chiseling away at my integrity. Just for that sake alone, I can't do that. And then I'm selling every other parent down the river in Canada. I can't do that to them and leave a snare for somebody else, the same snare that we've had to go through. Absolutely not. And so we just came back and told them where to stick it. I said, yeah, we're not doing that. In fact, actually, here's what we're saying. You guys drop the charges and we'll actually work with you on the education of bacterial meningitis to teach people the dangers of it. Because at that point in time, it hadn't been disproved yet that our son didn't have bacterial meningitis. So we were actually willing to work with them on the matter. And they didn't take our counter offer. And so then now we've been battling it out ever since. But that's where I was at that point in time, that I was actually considering it to a degree, that it wasn't just a complete, absolutely not going to happen. And the reason why is because there was still, a level of trepidation surrounding all this. There was fear, but every time they come at me, they just, the fear that I had once, they're just purging it from me. They're actually really doing me a great favor. And this is character building. As much as I don't like it at all, I don't. The experience is just phenomenal. So I don't know. Now I'm to the point where it's like, go ahead, throw me in jail. You're wrong, but go ahead and throw me in jail. You already did it once. Like, I'm liberated from that fear. I've been there. I've done it. What are you going to do? Like, I don't know. Waterboard me? Yeah. I don't know. Now I won't be scared of waterboarding.
Yeah.
Just keep it, right? Like, I don't know. So, if I was to encourage anybody out there, because I've had a lot of people say, I just really don't want what's happened to you and Colette to happen to us. To be honest with you, it's really sucked, but it has been the most liberating experience that we could have gone through, having to be faced with, these fears and recognizing that there actually is nothing to fear.
Yes. I love that. I mean, because we can all apply that anywhere in our lives at any time. There's something we're scared of. There's something that bothers us, and all we have to do is get at least one time where we confront it to see like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. It's not going to actually probably hurt me. Most of the things, some things can, but you know what I mean? And you have that success. And then, like you said, they're actually just training you. They're teaching you and they're showing you what you're really made of. And someone in the chat was saying, it's that divine spark. That's going to be the thing that defeats them. And they're actually helping you like fan it even brighter and brighter. You're like, okay, I guess I got to like give this, divine spark some kindling to burn a little bit if this is what you're going to bring at me. And also that, that bit of character you have where you said, like, it's not just about me. Like you said, it's better for me right now and my family right now if I take this, but what about the rest of everybody for the rest of time, in this entire country? And if we had more people acting like that, you never even would have got to this place where this was even happening, because someone along this huge chain of people who has completely failed, and dropped all, character value at all and just failed as a human, that it took all of them for this to continue to go on, And so if more people had that idea of like, what is actually best for everybody, it would just be such a different world. So I really appreciate that.
Sure would be a different world.
Yeah.
Absolutely would. But unfortunately, there's two main motivating factors, and it's, fear and love. And sadly, we find ourselves many times defaulting to the fear, but we got to find ourselves walking in a place of love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And knowing that that's inside of us and knowing that it's inconquerable. The more you have to use it, the stronger it gets. And then it's a powerful tool and weapon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it looks like up there in Canada, things are also getting worse with the whole COVID thing and lockdowns and masks, and that it's not getting better; it's getting worse. How are you feeling about all of that? What's going on?
We're largely disconnected from it because we have a buffer. We're living on the property here. We don't leave the property that much,
Yeah.
right? And so my wife will go out shopping and grabbing some, some stuff and whatnot to bring onto the property. We're working here. We're trying to, get it so that we're completely self-sufficient, growing all of our own food and all that. And so, we largely don't see it. But we do hear about it a lot. We hear about it from a lot of our friends and all that. And it's really, it's heart-wrenching is what it is. They're breaking people. A lot of people are so attached to the lifestyle. And we're at a point in time where we have to be willing to sever from that lifestyle. In fact, I've just started to hear reports, from people that would have said 6 months ago or 8 months ago, there's no way in hell that I'm going to get that vaccine. I'm not going to touch it. And now people are realizing at what cost it's going to come at. And they're starting to compromise.
No.
They're already starting to compromise in their mind and say, I'm going to have to get it if I want to continue on with this lifestyle, if I want to continue to work. And so, it's interesting because it was back in December of 2019, I started to feel, and this is why it's so important to be, connected divinely.
Yeah.
Because you get these forewarnings. You're prepared. You start to prepare before the storm even comes, and you don't even know what the storm is a lot of times. But in December of 2019, I already started to feel impressed to start, warning people. Encouraging people to begin to live communally and to become self-sufficient.
I remember.
And I didn't actually act on it till January of 2020. And then I started to realize after my first video of communicating the benefits of it and how beautiful it is when people come together and they work together and how much more you can get done. Then I realized by about March that it wasn't, just about communicating the value of it. It was absolutely necessity that people understand and hear this message, because people had to have an alternate or a way out from the lifestyle that they were engaged in. Otherwise, they'd be fully enslaved to the system. And if it came down to crunch time of, are you going to get vaccinated or are you not? It's not just a matter of, am I going to get the vaccine or not? Am I going to give up cold turkey without being prepared, my lifestyle? And if you don't have a way out, well, then what that means is that basically you're getting thrown to the wolves. You're going to find yourself on the street or something like that, right? Like if you didn't take the year and get prepared with, maybe a bug out bag and all that type of stuff and getting your camping gear in place or networking with other people and starting to, get off grid or whatnot, so that you didn't have to be a slave to the system, that you weren't dependent on their food or their heat, their natural gas coming into your house, or their fuel, ensuring that you can get from point A to point B, and as well as food is getting from point A to point B, or like with all those dependencies, you're a slave to the system. And so, if you're a slave to the system, then at some point in time, and they're saying, no vaccine, no pay, no benefits, no, you don't get to benefit from society. Well, then what that means is that basically you got to go homeless, you got to go broke. And so, unfortunately, there's people that are already starting to see the writing on the wall. And they're already starting to compromise and say, well, I guess I'm going to get that vaccine. When 1 year ago or 6 months ago, they were adamantly opposed to the concept of that vaccine.
Yeah.
And so it's really sad. And we're just watching it go down like that. And so, my encouragement to people is, hey, if you didn't act in the past year, act now.
Yeah.
And don't do sort of a state of fear, but just act now, knowing that wisdom dictates that you got to get out of the way of that vaccine and that vaccine agenda, and do so without having to suffer severe consequences for doing so, because you weren't prepared.
Yeah, it is so sad to think about people who do understand the dangers inherent in this, um, supposed vaccine. It's not, so the mRNA ones like can't even be really defined as that, right? But we have to call it that apparently. And then to have to give that up and give in to themselves, like I can't imagine the self denial that comes in or whatever must have to have, must feel really awful to then turn on yourself and do that to yourself, even though I get like not knowing, being ignorant and just believing that this is good and just going along with it, la la la, but seeing it and then doing it anyways must be pretty harsh on your soul. I mean, honestly, like I can't imagine that. But like you said, people feel bullied and they feel cornered, and they are bullied and cornered. And we're hearing now this Johnson and Johnson vaccine is being paused by the CDC and the FDA, and it's like, well, yeah, anybody paying attention could have told you these things are happening, and there's supposedly it's causing this very strange blood clotting, which is interesting because so does COVID supposedly, and then and then this is also like the canaries in the coal mine. We should all assume, right? We should assume that if there's some people having this response, there's going to be far more people down the road that will develop this eventually. And who knows how long that takes, but all these people have already got it. And who knows what's going to happen to them. It's terrifying.
Exactly. And we don't know what the long-term consequences are either. I mean, a lot of people associate, vaccine injury or changes from vaccines to take place, within the first week or two or whatever. But we don't know what, with this mRNA vaccine, we don't understand the long-term process. I mean, it's doing something in the body. It's changing things in the body. So I don't think we're going to see the full effect of it for weeks, months
Years.
down the road.
Yeah.
Years even. Yeah. I don't think people will find themselves the same.
No.
Physiologically, I don't think they're going to be the same anymore. I think it'll actually have a devastating effect. And then part of the issue as well is when people are willing to compromise like that, when they know that it goes against everything that they believed in, willing to compromise their values, the psychology behind it dictates that when they do that, they're more likely, because of that guilt, in a way to suppress that guilt, they're more willing to turn on their colleagues and those that they associate with that were also against it, because now they have this guilt that, I had to go get it. I had to make a change. And that bitterness will be projected onto those who maybe had the ability to avoid it or were willing to be strong enough to avoid it.
That's a really good point. There was one of the few times someone said something to me about not wearing a mask. I was in a store and he was like, "There's free masks right there." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's okay. I can't wear one. I don't wear one." And he's like, "Well, I have to." I'm like, "Yeah, you do." But I wanted to say, like, because you chose that, and so you think you do. Like, I don't. You can do whatever you want to do. But he clearly was like, "Well, if I have to do this, why don't you?" It's like, it's really none of your business. It's my body, isn't it? You can do whatever you want to yours. I don't have to do that to mine. But yeah, I can see that psychology, like you said, just like projecting then out at other people, and it's very effective and disturbing. That peer pressure, and like the worst kind of peer pressure is happening right now, on that level.
Yeah, that's really sad. It is sad.
It is, and I also wonder if the eventual consequences of some of these might be, like you said, maybe months, maybe years, and that will be called, another wave of whatever mysterious disease, and then it will just reinforce their push for even further draconian measures, tyranny, and who knows, further vaccines. I don't know. But it's pretty nefarious. It's pretty dark. Which brings us right back kind of full circle to why it's so important to take care of yourself, keep that light bright. You have this spiritual energy, and it doesn't have as easy of a time coming through you and into the world if your body is degraded and your mind is degraded and you're disconnected and you're, not living kind of in truth and wellness. And so it brings us right back to your supplements and your way of life that is so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to make sure that we don't do anything to compromise that light from flowing through us. It's so important, especially during these times, because we do live. There's beauty all around us, and there's always love and light. But if we were to look at it, the ambient level of light and darkness in the world right now, we do live in really dark times. We do. We live in times of deception, and it's so important at this given time that we allow that light and love to flow through us. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves walking down strange, dark paths, being deceived, just like the next person. And so we got to make sure we keep things clean. Substance abuse is so detrimental to numbing our minds and our spirits. We got to make sure we avoid that type of stuff from taking place. Not just for ourselves, but for the sake of our loved ones around us, or whether we have children or a spouse, and, just so we can be who we need to be and come to the table with all the value that we have. And so it's so important.
And it's just like it's kind of like the vaccine thing or the mask thing, like, well, I have to do it. Why don't you? It's like equal and opposite. And you're like, well, I have all this light and love and you can too, and instead of like a peer pressure, it's like an invitation, and people are like, hey, I don't know what it is really, but like, I really like that person's energy or whatever. Like, I want to see what they have going on, and you're spreading that. It's infectious. Get it out there.
Absolutely. And, there's something to be said about, just come to the table with that brilliance, right? I haven't worn a mask once until, after ending up with this broken arm. I actually wore a mask, unfortunately, for about a whole 2 minutes when I was in the hospital setting. It was uncomfortable. I don't know how people do it, to be honest with you.
I don't either.
But anyways, but I should have. I look back at it and say, regardless of that situation, I still should have, dug in my heels, dang it. But anyways,
yeah.
When I go into a store and I'm not wearing a mask, sometimes people look at you a little bit different. Sometimes they'll try to harass you. They'll try to bring you down. But, I've always walked into these stores, with this just joy, this happiness. I make sure that I really turn it up when I go in there, and I walk in with confidence, and I'm smiling, and I'm greeting people, and I'm actually interacting with people, even if it's not non-verbally. I'm making connection. And it's very, very rare that I've ever had anybody try to even harass me about it. Very rare.
I love that.
But then I hear about other people where they refuse to wear a mask, but they're going in and they're going in with a bit of a, pessimistic attitude, and they just get picked apart. It's on a regular basis. It's like, I can't go, into the city to grab a few things without getting harassed once or twice. Like, wow, that's interesting. I still haven't been harassed yet. And then, finally I had my first experience of being harassed not too long ago. But, I think it was just somebody trying to play the alpha male or something like that. Some older gentleman working in a store. And I think he was just trying to really, show his position. And we went back and forth. And he said, hey, you need to be wearing a mask. I said, I'm exempt. He said, I don't think you are. I said, oh yeah. Why don't you think that? Well, even if you are, you have to wear a mask. I said, oh no, it's actually built into the bylaws. It's written right in there that, exemptions apply. Well, even if you are exempt, I can kick you out. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. Sure. And then he's walked off. Right? It's like, you showed how tough you were. You can kick me out. All right. But you're not going to.
Yeah.
But okay. I'll continue on my shopping. Thank you, buddy. And so, it's just really interesting to, it's very rare that people will actually interact with you in a negative way when you are bringing positivity to the table there, where you're just trying to be nice and show people that you can still smile. Right?
Yeah. And remind them that smiles exist, because no one's seeing any. It's awesome. And that I totally have had the same, like, if I go in, with that, like, you mess with me, I'm going to mess with you. And and I do feel like more attraction of that sort of like confrontational, because you're putting it out, you're putting out and then you're getting it back. But that exact opposite, like you said, where I'm just like, no, I'm happy, I'm good, I'm free. If you really need to like force me out of your place or whatever, I guess that's your choice personally, but I'm going to choose to still live like this. And it's cool because I then get the opposite, where I see people sort of like, you were like, they're like wondering maybe like, well, is there a way I don't have to wear this? Or like, or at least you can see them sort of responding like, oh, wow, there's a smile. Like, look at that. And I don't know if you've encountered other people not wearing masks, and they'll sort of like, hey, you get to share that little moment of cool connection with people who are otherwise strangers. And you put it out and you get it back, whatever it is you're putting out. So it makes a lot of sense to bring that attitude. Would be much better than bringing the confrontational, like fighting sort of energy, which maybe has its place in its time, right? But not necessarily just while you're out, doing your chores and, shopping and whatever. It's not a war.
Exactly. Yeah, and think about it this way: you might be the only smile that somebody else got to see that day,
Yeah.
right?
How sad.
So make sure that smile's shining through.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And people need that right now. Like we said, there's all this depression, there's all this, mental health issues, all this suicide, all this fear just constantly pummeling them. And so, to be that and to do it genuinely, that could be who knows what kind of difference in someone's day or life. So I love that. I love that idea. So have you noticed the signaling for this like possible World War III scenario, which I feel like is always on the horizon? So maybe it's just that constant, glow that they need to keep around to keep us afraid. Or have you noticed it, or do you feel like it has any meat to it?
I think we've got some real interesting times ahead of us. There's no doubt about it. I think we've been on the brink of World War III for quite some time. Even when you look at world wars, they generally are preceded by economic warfare, and we've been in economic warfare with numerous nations for quite some time. And then it turns into physical warfare, and it just depends on who's willing to launch the first shot. But in Canada here, there's some interesting developments. I mean, and I'm sure the U.S. is going the same route right now too, with the new administration there. But in Canada, even previous to what was going on in the States there, and you guys getting a new administration, we were already seeing Chinese troops finding their way onto Canadian soil.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and so they're probably largely already here. And so it'll be allowed, and then they're just waiting for the event, some event to justify all of a sudden we need the help of the Chinese, the People's Republic Army of China to come in. We need their help. And all of a sudden, magically, they're here. Oh, wow, right?
We're so fast.
They're good, and so we just need the right event for the general public to accept it, right? Just like in World War II, they needed the right event. I mean, the U.S. was wanting to get into World War II for quite some time, and they just needed the right event. So they just took their whole fleet, out of San Diego, I believe it was the Bay of San Diego, San Francisco, sorry. And they took it to Hawaii, and they let them sit there like sitting ducks, right? And the general there even knew that the Japanese were likely coming, so he sent out a convoy to intercept them. And then he was told from the White House to rein it back in. And then all of a sudden, this attack happens, and whoa, hey, we got justification to get into World War II. So we're going to look at a very similar scenario there. We can anticipate it. There's going to be an event that takes place. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like. That's going to justify the necessity of having Chinese UN troops on Canadian and U.S. soil. And so, and that's going to be the commencement of World War III, but it's going to take on a bit of a different flavor than what many people probably think it will. And it's going to be largely an inside job, I think. I don't think it's going to be truly, I think it'll be the people against, the patriots against these countries, but not the actual countries against the countries. Because I think our countries have already been taken over largely.
I agree. I mean, China owns much of the United States resources and land, and I know that's true in Canada as well. And I know they get more and more all the time. And I'm sure someone will call me racist for saying that for some reason, but I don't care what your race is. It's just interesting that this nation has so much influence in our, otherwise what should be sovereign territory. And yeah, when I started seeing the troops, I think you're actually the person who sent me a really interesting document about Chinese troops on the border. Maybe it was, I think it was you, amassing there. And I know there was some sort of people noticed and then made us think about it, and it kind of defrayed it a bit. But like you said, I'm sure it's not going anywhere. I'm sure they're still here. And exactly like you said too, they're always able to pull off something and false flag it, say it's whatever they want to say it is, and then justify whatever they want to do. And it makes me nervous because I've had these dreams my whole life that I otherwise can't explain, why am I dreaming of Chinese troops on US soil and me running from them so many times throughout my life, because it's not in movies. It's not like this common thread, but I always have this. So I'm always hopeful that we can jump into a different timeline where that doesn't happen, but I don't really expect that we will avoid it necessarily.
No, I mean, I've never had a dream myself to validate what you're saying, but I've heard of a lot of other people, even people close to me, that have had these dreams, and they don't
Really?
even know who the people are. They just see these blue helmets.
Wow.
Like, who wears the blue helmets? Well, that's the UN,
UN.
right? Oh, who works with the UN? Oh, China, right? And so it's
Oh,
just really interesting. There's been a common thread with a lot of people's dreams surrounding
wow.
on our home territory, an invading force, but that it doesn't appear to be coming in as an invading force.
That's very interesting to hear too, because I've heard this idea, this posited by people, that the bigger the sort of trauma, like let's say 9/11 kind of like shook the whole world, and especially the US and Canada, I'm sure. And the bigger the mass trauma, the bigger the amount of people that the trauma touches, the further in time it sort of goes out through our consciousness. So people were having dreams and whatnot about 9/11 for years before, and then it got more intense months before, and it got really intense weeks before, and then like the day before was like most people dreaming about it, because like the ripples of it are strongest, and then they kind of go out. And that is a fascinating idea to me, that but it, again, that doesn't bode very well for the type of experience this will be for the mass consciousness, if that's the truth.
Yeah.
It'll be pretty disturbing. So and then I feel like this whole shipping thing with like the Evergreen and the Suez Canal, and now Egypt's taken it over, and Israel just did whatever to Iran, and I'm like, it's not just the, China and the US and the Canada. This is, again, World War III, so it's going to be a global set of catastrophes and people having excuses to pull off massive resource transfer and land grabs and all of that stuff that happens with war.
Absolutely.
It's going to be insane.
That it will be. And once again, the only thing that I could even suggest preparing for when it comes to that is, obviously having your bug out bags ready to go and having your survival skills sharpened up and all that, but being most of all spiritually prepared for it, because it's what we're going to see is going to like melt the hearts of most men out there, right? I mean, most men, we've grown up in a time when life has been way too easy, that a situation like that finding itself on our own home territory would cripple most people, where they wouldn't even know how to move. They wouldn't even know what to do. They'd be immobilized. So it's so important that, one, we recognize the danger of what's coming, and that it's our turn, unfortunately, now in the Occident here. That we get to experience what they've experienced in Asia and in Europe and Africa and the Middle East, with their common garden variety wars, that it's now going to come to roost in our home territory, in a land without walls, where the cities have no protections built in. And it's going to be devastating, and we just need to make sure that we're prepared for it in any way that we can be.
It's a really
physically, spiritually.
It's a really good point. And it again circles back to that, like we've been talking about, like get your physical health in order as much as you can, your mental health in order as much as you can. But that, and if you can go like join up with a community that's intentional and work together, and that will be somewhat safer, at least, somewhat more, self-sufficient and not dependent on these massive systems that they're going to most easily use to control us. But that spiritual piece is really important too. And like you said, it's not, it's not something that most people are going to be able to deal with, even like the most basic levels of what could happen, right? Even that is going to be so challenging for most people. And I don't know that we people ever have this training or this education that like the spiritual world even exists, and that especially once you even acknowledge that it exists and you have a soul and you're a spiritual being, that you can call on other spiritual beings for help anytime you want. Like, they're not like, oh, why are you calling on me? Like, it's 3 a.m, like I'm busy, like I think people first of all don't realize they can, and then they think they shouldn't or something, or that like they're not allowed to, or that they're like imposing, or that they're not good enough, or they haven't been to church enough, or just all of these ideas I think we've been kind of trained to think, and without even questioning it. But I really want to encourage everyone, like God, Jesus, whoever you like and think, whatever you want to call it, like they want you to call on them. They're totally cool with it, and you can do it anytime you want. It can be tiny. You can be like, I have a sliver in my pinky and it hurts. Or it can be huge. Like there's foreign forces in my city and I'm terrified. You know, like anything in between, it's cool. Just do it.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. You're absolutely, you know, there is this immobilizing, crippling effect of our the general thought process that we're just insignificant beings, you know, floating out in the middle of space, right? Really.
Right.
And that's so far from the truth. That we are extremely significant. We're here for purpose. We're here for a reason. And you know, ultimately, in my opinion, we're here for God's pleasure, right? That we're here to do his will and his bidding and become who he made us to be. And that requires us to tap into that, to recognize who we are, that we are divine creations. We're not just some accident.
And then imagine how much more spiritual energy can flow through you once you're like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm here. I'm going to connect with you on purpose and ask for your help. Like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like, they want you to call them. They're like totally cool with that. You should do it.
Absolutely.
You're right. Everything about what we've been trained to believe about ourselves and where we are and everything has been leading to that exact illusion that we're not important and that there's nothing else out there. Which is very sad. Is there anything else going on in Canada that you want to share with us or with you in your life or that, you know, you've got coming up maybe or you're thinking about or anything?
Well, you know, going back to the whole court situation, we've just got this, you know, we're really trying to push it forward to the Supreme Court, being that all the good that took place in 2016 with the trial that we had there was undone, plus some extremely damaging in relation to parental rights and medical choice here in Canada.
Yeah.
So we're actually, rather than going back to trial right now, we're actually trying to get this elevated to the Supreme Court of Canada, where they've already sided with us once before.
Cool.
And get this whole thing just once and for all turned over and solidified in favor of the rights of parents here in Canada. So we got that going on, and so we're really pushing hard on that. Aside from that,
is there any way people can help you with that, or you know?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you know, I guess, you know, I should really be living by the principle of asking, you shall receive. But I always have a hard time asking for help.
I am the same.
We are fundraising,
but you deserve it.
You know, we are fundraising for sure, because the Supreme Court process last time cost us $150,000.
Oh my God.
And it's already cost us to this point right now, just in drafting up all the paperwork and everything. And we've got lawyers working at half rate. They're great, you know, just making it a lot cheaper, but it still costs us at this point in time, I think about $35,000 just over the last, you know, month and a half here. And so it gets ridiculous, but it's worth it. So we are fundraising. We've already had quite a bit of fundraising come in. I think we've got about 15,000 of that was already fundraised, which is beautiful. We didn't really ask. People just started reaching out. So there is that going on. You'll find that on my Facebook page or even on my Instagram page. The donation portion there. It's a Go Get Funding page. I'm not that familiar. Like, I've got it set up. I think if you went to gogetfunding.com, not GoFundMe, but gogetfunding.com. GoFundMe kicked me off years ago.
Of course.
But anyway,
of course
so
they did.
Go Get. Yeah. And then we had You Caring funding, which lasted about a whole 2 hours before we got kicked off that as well. There's just too many pharma trolls that were reporting us. But anyways, so gogetfunding.com. And if you just type in, I think, Ezekiel, Ezekiel, it'll probably pop up with ours, or Stand for Truth or something like that as well. You type that into the search and gogetfunding.com and it'll pop up. You'll see my mug there on a video. But yeah, so we're fundraising. That's a fundraiser that we've had going since, I think, early 2019. So the total dollar value that's been accumulated there is going all the way back there, and it funded some of our first trials. So it's not completely reflective of what we need right now. So anyways, there is that. And we're always grateful for that, because you're not just helping me and my wife and our family, but you're really just funding parental rights here in Canada to continue to be upheld. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think I just want to add too that people are like, well, I don't have enough to share. And, you know, but if every single person shared even like $1, you know, if everybody did that, that's a huge amount too. So don't discount what you might be able to share, even though you feel like, you know, you don't have to give like $1,000 or whatever. Just give what you can. Exactly.
You know, that's a great point, because when you look at the page, it's been visited, I think about 60,000 times, something like that. and we fundraised about $55,000. So if everybody would have
$1.
given $1,
Yeah.
if that's all they would have given, it would have, I think we'd actually have less money because they take off an administrative fee or whatever initially. So,
True.
But anyways, the fact of the matter is that it just goes to show that if everybody who had visited the page even gave a couple dollars, $5, whatever, it would have added up, and we would have more than enough money to ensure that we're able to go to task for Canadians here.
Yeah. And it's just, like we've said, they've chosen you, they've targeted you. It's for political reasons. It's for what they want to protect themselves from, but also what they want to pull off on controlling other people about. And, it's so convenient that they just all brought back up, vaccination in your case when it had already been settled, because right now vaccination is such a huge topic and it's such a huge focus. And so of course they will, and of course they said racism was involved because that's such a huge thing that they're using to wedge and divide people about. And it's a hot button topic, and it just gets people to react, and they're just manipulating this however they can. And so it's really important, for all those reasons too. It's not just what you're setting precedent for and protecting parents from, but it's just to say, like, it's not cool that you are attacking people like this. And it's not cool that you are using it just because it's politically, convenient for you. And, we got to fight back against all of that. And you are the one doing it. And it's so we all need to support each other, especially in things like this, because you're the front person, but we're all here behind you. And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, and where else can people go? I think we've dropped the truehope.com for people who are in the United States. I've got the link up to the GoFundMe, and then you also brought up Standing for Truth.
Yeah, there's stand and then number 4 and then truth .ca. I've got that website, but that's also my I think it's my name on Instagram. I'm not that tech savvy. So yeah, I think if you look that up on Instagram, that'll be me. The stand for truth.ca is, I think, my handle name or whatever you'd call it there. Yeah, so you can find me on there. So I had to jump over to Instagram and light up an account there just recently because Facebook immediately started banning me right after the decision was rendered on March 8th. And I started to expose just the clear, blatant lies. And I was using their own decision and using the evidence that had been submitted to them to just highlight that, look, they had this evidence and they completely ignored it. They had to ignore, a full page of evidence here in order to come to this conclusion. And so they're just trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes to just take a stab at Canadian or parental rights here. Mm-hmm. And so Facebook started banning me over that before I even got onto the vaccine topic. They already banned me, and they prevented me from being able to post any live streams for over a week. So then I had to go onto Instagram and light up an account there. And so now I'm jumping between the two right now.
Have backups and backups. Well, and Facebook owns Instagram. And Facebook connects with Twitter, or they don't own each other. They're not directly connected, but they inform each other of people they've banned so that they can have like their little watch lists. And, so eventually we're just going to have to find other platforms besides that too. I don't know if you want to make a community at locals.com. That's what I've done to avoid censorship, and it's really cool. Plus people can support you and share some funding with you that way if they want to come interact in your community. And I know other things are kind of coming along and being built all the time, and so hopefully we can just find ways to avoid this, because it's not an accident that some of the biggest companies are instantly also on your case.
Yeah.
It's not an accident.
No, it's not an accident at all. And Instagram was flying. Like, I was getting notifications about every minute, new people following and all that. And literally within a day and a half, I had over 1,000 followers.
Nice.
And so it looked like it was really going to get good. And then it just came to a complete halt.
Because they just stopped.
Cut off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because they'll stop people from people will follow you and they'll just unfollow. And the person won't know because they think they followed you. And so they won't go check, and it's crazy. Yeah. My first video had over 10,000 views on there. And then my next video had a couple hundred views. So it just completely, So I saw what was going on. So I've been a little bit more silent lately. We've been building a big case behind the scenes here in relation to the corruption that's going on within the Alberta appeals courts. And so we're just waiting to come down with a sledgehammer at that point, and hoping that they lift the shadow banning off of these platforms so we can actually get it out there. That would be nice. hopefully, yeah. But at
But
least we have.
I'm not.
Yeah, we're not holding our breaths. But
No.
at least we have this community that we have here, and everyone here can also spread the word through their own channels, post it on your page, like tweet it out, whatever you're doing, share it with people and invite people also to do whatever they can to support and get behind it too. It's just we all have to stick together, especially now more than ever, more and more so as time goes on. So I also shared your Facebook page in case you want to go friend you there if they're allowed to. And what do you want to leave people with? What kind of thought or idea do you want to say before we shut things down?
Well, anytime I get asked that question, it always reverts back to love.
Yeah.
It reverts back to allowing love to be our guiding force, and that it's actually the most powerful force, and that it's actually the antidote to all the problems that we see in the world today. When you boil it right down, when we look at any issue, it's a result of there not being an adequate amount of love, that people are acting out of fear, greed, that type of stuff, which is actually largely rooted in fear, lack, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so just, tap into the source of love. When I come from a biblical perspective, I come to learn that God is love, truly. And so if you want that authentic love within you, you got to find out who you are in God, that you're a divine creation of the Most High. And that his love is there for the taking. You just gotta tap into it and allow him to transform you through his love, which is what keeps everything going in the world. Really, it's all love. And so allow that to flow through you, and you'll find that it won't just transform you, it'll start to transform everything around you.
Yeah, that's the antidote. I love it. Thank you so much. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom, according to the amazing David Stephan. David, thank you so much for coming back again. I can't wait to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I sure appreciate it. Blessings to you.
You too. Well, remember, the entirety of this game is the control of your mind, heart, and soul. This is why they try to trap you with elaborate visions of fear. This is why they have to work so ceaselessly on informing you of what you should do and believe. And this is why they pump out the programming, media saturation, and devices you can plug into your field, because they need you. And you don't need even a tiny bit of what they've got. They're empty, void-filled husks, and you are the creative pulse of this space we all inhabit. They are nothing without you. They can whip up some toxins, spray the sky all day, pretend a virus hunts you down, threaten your job and home and family, pretend AI and aliens are coming for you in the entire world, and even trigger the events that lead to world war, but they will never control your mind. Only you do that. Don't fall prey to living in fear, angst, sadness, or hopelessness, no matter what specter they raise up next to try to entrap all that beautiful, abundant, love-centered energy you've got spouting out of you. Keep spouting. And until you master the cosmic spout of love that is you, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Domestic terrorists.
They're not wearing masks.
Domestic terrorists. It's that basic, it's that simple.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people?
These extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
They're not wearing masks.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. We'll sensitize them to what we have to do.
Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
We made it our mission to limit the spread of this disease and to limit the risks to lives and to our economy. We've been clear from the beginning that getting together in groups outside of your household that is not permitted is not allowed.
And when it to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing.
This nation, this idea called America, was and always will be a new world. Our new world.
Today we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
They're not wearing masks.
You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work? I am.
I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp. I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp. I'ma have a lava lamp in